I share with you what I tell my daughter. You are billions of years in the making. You were born of this time for this time. There is no one quite like you. You have survived genocide, slavery, and disease. Your body holds the wisdom of all of your ancestors who came before you. You are part of everything. My grandfather taught me these things when I was a child. We are of the Shinnecock Montaukett peoples of Long Island in New York. When I was a little girl, my grandfather would take me for walks in the woods, introducing me to all my relations, even the trees. He would have me place my hands on the tree. Be still, quiet your breathing, listen. I could feel the tree moving beneath me. This tree, he said, is your relative. In the same way that I am your relative, you must honor and respect it. In this way, I came to know the faces of the trees, much in the way that I know yours. I have to remember. My grandfather died when I was 13 years old. I moved to New York City to become a student at the Fame High School of Music and the Arts. My grandfather and his teaching seemed far away for many years. When I was 29 years old, I gave up my seat on an oversold flight in exchange for a free round-trip ticket anywhere the airline flew. It was 1999, and it was Alaska Airlines. I have to tell you, I had no ambition, desire, interest at all in ever going to any place cold. In fact, I moved from New York to California to escape the harsh winters and sweltering summers. And yet here was this invitation, a door opening. I decided to go to a place called Kotzebue, located on the supposed Bering Land Bridge. I was curious. Had my ancestors migrated across the ice to populate North and South America? I decided I would do a sort of reverse commute. I wanted to walk across the ice and see what that felt like. So I went to the North Face outlet, bought a bunch of warm clothes, packed them in a bag, did a little bit of research, found out that I should probably go in the last week of March when it was still cold, but the sun had returned. So, putting my clothes in the bag, checked it at the airport, boarded the plane, and headed to Kotzebue. Kotzebue is a very small airport. When I arrived, the airport had only a portable jetway staircase, and as I exited the plane and inhaled, my lungs and nose hairs froze as I inhaled the minus 30-degree Arctic air. I was wearing only a polar fleece and some slip-on shoes. You can see where this is going. They, of course, lost my luggage. My warm clothes didn't arrive. And thank goodness the Inupiat women who worked at the airport took pity on me and outfitted me in everything that I needed. Traditional sealskin hat, gloves, boots, you name it. And so the next morning, with just my camera tucked in my parka, I started walking out onto the frozen sea. I was so surprised at how dry and squeaky the ice felt beneath my feet, like styrofoam. And I thought, this is my extraterrestrial moment. So foreign it felt to me. And yet, as I walked, I smiled, thinking that this was not some sci-fi, far-off, distant planet. This was my own. I understood that I was standing on my planet. And as I walked, there were small twigs in the ice set every 5 meters or so. Great, there's even a path. 10 minutes would go by, and a person would pull up on a snowmobile, and they'd say, "Are you okay?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm just going for a walk." They'd shrug and say, "Okay," and go away. this happened for quite a while, so I thought, great, I'm not even that alone. After this for several hours, I came to a point where the twigs ended, and I kept walking. And I walked for over an hour before two people, each on snowmobiles, pulled up. A Russian woman and an Inupiat man. And they asked me a different question. They said, "Where are you going?" And in my naivete and imagination, I thought that I could walk to the edge of the sea ice. I had no real thinking that I could actually make it to Russia this way. So I thought I could at least get to where the sea ice ended and the dark blue sea began. They said, "That's 22 miles away." And I was like, "Oh, I can't walk that." I have to tell you, I had no supplies, no water, no shelter, no food. Just the camera tucked in my pocket to keep the film from freezing. And so I thought to myself, I've never been on a snowmobile before. Another door opening, another opportunity. So I climbed onto the back with the man, and off we went. I had no idea snowmobiles go so fast. We were going over 60 miles an hour, and after a while, I did the math in my head, and I was like, whoa, 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 stop! I have to walk this back. So they said, okay, let me off. And I remember watching them disappear into the horizon. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. They just disappeared into the white. And then I turned to look for the town, and it was gone. All around me, 360 degrees, was just white. And then I panicked. I realized just how vulnerable I was. Nobody in the entire world knew where I was. There were polar bears out there. The ice could open up and I could fall through a crack and disappear. I could freeze to death. And so I said to myself, stay calm. And I decided to turn around and follow the snowmobile tracks back before the gusting wind blew them away. It took me 5 hours of walking before I could see the town again. But as I walked, my grandfather's words began to come back to me. I really felt in a very physical way for the first time that this was my planet, that it was made of the material of this planet, that we all are, and that I would return to the material of this planet. I understood the illusion of separateness, of religion and language and border. I went home with this in my mind. What I didn't know was that I was actually a few weeks pregnant with my daughter as I started that walk. And I say my journey as a mother began as I walked on that ice. 2.5 years later, 9/11 happened. And the switch came on for me to become a photographer. I remember sitting on my couch in Berkely watching the news, thinking almost out loud to myself, what can I do to counter this darkness, this cynicism? And I knew without knowing why that I would use my camera to photograph the experiences of my life and show that there was something beautiful about this life and this planet. We traveled first to Svalbard as a family in the high Arctic. There, I fell in love with the stillness and unique quality of light. As we broke the ice with our tiny ship, somehow it felt wrongly exhilarating. One thing leads to another, and I thought, if this is the Arctic, what does the Antarctic look like? It was in the Weddell Sea that I saw my first iceberg. I was humbled by the sheer scale and size of it. I stood on the bow of our ship as we sailed past these massive entities, and I could not help but wonder, how many ancestors ago did this fall as snowflakes? I got hired as an expedition photographer on ships that were both research and tourist vessels. I spent anywhere from 1 to 3 months at a time traveling back and forth between the Arctic and Antarctic each year. You might say I'm bipolar. When I first started going to the polar regions, I had no idea what climate change and global warming was. But as time passed, I could not help but notice what was happening. All things being interconnected, I thought, if our poles are melting, what effect will it have on our temperate zones? I started chasing storms in the United States in 2008. I am named after Hurricane Camille. Maybe that has something to do with it. But I was curious, although not prepared, at the overwhelming beauty and immense power that these storms had. you what I tell my daughter. My job as a photographer is to inspire you, show you things in a way that opens you to greater awareness and compassion. We only get this one home, this one planet. My job as a human being is to walk lightly upon the earth so that its gifts are still abundant for your great, great, great grandchildren. This planet is our only home in the void that is space. Let's take care of it. All my relations.